Unmatched is a game that I've been enjoying both offline as well as online. Recently, the digital version has come out, and as mentioned, I've been having a lot of fun with it. Now, I've really been stressing trying to learn how to play Sinbad, and this is actually a recap from one of the recent games I played. Let's get into it. So here we are about to load into the game. To my knowledge, there's no way to review in client the game itself. Now, I could be missing something, but we're going to go from the replay, and I just want to talk about some of my choices and decisions, explain a little bit about the game to my audience who may not be familiar with it. So let's jump in. Now, as mentioned, I'm trying to learn how to play Sinbad, and I always loved the Sinbad movies when I was a kid, as well as a number of the other claymation heavy, we'll say, different movies. And that's why I was drawn to Sinbad. He also seems to have a unique play style. Now, I jumped into Unmatched actually with some of the Jurassic Park sets and then picked up the big box later on. So I actually don't own the set with Sinbad in it. But we're playing against Alice here. And this actually has, well, she has some unique quirks. And you'll see as I try and click through, we're going through the initial setup. So for anybody not familiar with Unmatched, it's a tactics card game, we'll say. It's a board game, but it's focused on, well, you have to eliminate your opponent's main character. Now, depending on who you choose, there could be multiple main characters. In this case, Sinbad has the porter on his side, whereas Alice has the Jabberwocky. Now, you can see here, I'll pause it for a second, you can see that Alice, as well as all the other heroes, generals, main characters, whatever, they all have their own abilities, and we'll get into the specific details as we go through. So basically, the main takeaway here for Alice is she can alternate between two forms, big and small, and it's going to change the value of some of her cards. So as mentioned earlier, this game does have a deck, but there's no deck building. It's more strategy choosing initially. And that is when you choose your character, all of the characters have an assigned deck. And within that deck, you can't make changes. There are specific numbers of each card. It could be 3, it could be 1, it could be 2. And as a result, your opponent, as well as you know how to manipulate that, you can impact the variance, so to speak. This allows you to plan ahead and say, oh, well, I know that they have X number of this card, so I can try and run them out of it by baiting certain plays, which I think is a unique take and something I really like. It's not without its flaws, but the game overall is a lot of fun. So my game plan here, especially since I opened up with by Fortune and Fate, is as of late, I'm trying to tax my opponent's resources as Sinbad. I feel I was being way too defensive overall when I was trying to play it previously, and it was costing me games. So what I want to do is get up in my opponent's face, pressure them, make them play cards to defend themselves, especially since a lot of Sinbad's cards have draw a card, draw 2 cards, or even draw 3 cards on them. This means that I can refill and basically reload and continue pressuring my opponent. So you can see here I'm just double checking how some of the functionality is going to work. And you may have noticed the tabs that'll show up later on in the replay that you do see the deck list. The client will highlight things for you so you know what's been played, what's still available, what options your opponent has, which I think is fantastic that it tells you all this information. So as mentioned, I'm trying to tax my opponent, trying to pressure them, force them into plays because I feel I can refill, and Sinbad's ability is related to his voyages, which kind of makes sense if you're familiar with the character. If Sinbad is able to play a voyage, well, when you play a voyage, it then benefits, boosts, buffs all of your later voyages and your movement speed. So by the end of the game, when you played 6 of his 7 voyages, you're going to have 8 movement. You can move 8 spaces in any given movement cycle, as well as getting +6 to the value of, well, your 7th voyage. Each one goes up by 1 successively. The 7th voyage is the voyage home. It doesn't have to be played in order, but the voyage home will pull all the other voyages back to your hand to replay them again, but obviously powering them down in the process. So my idea here is if I pressure my opponent, get them either low enough that I could just take them down, through normal means, or I can constantly threaten, hey, all of my voyages now, all of my other cards, they're going to be pushing so much damage that you must defend constantly. They're going to have to make a decision whether they want to defend early or they want to defend late, and I'm hoping they can't do both. Now, I made a weird play here by moving to where I moved. I wasn't really, at the time, I kind of second-guessed myself, but my goal here was to try and trap them from getting outside. I don't want them very far away from me early in the game in order to apply the pressure that I've been explaining. So in this case, we are doing okay. We're at a life deficit early on. We're not really even threatening Alice all that much, and clearly not at all with the Jabberwock. I had previously against, say, King Arthur and Medusa, certainly doesn't seem to make sense against Medusa, tried to aim for the sidekicks, those supplementary characters, eliminate them, and then isolate the main character. The problem is I just feel like I was wasting a ton of resources. Now, that may be a viable strategy against some of the other characters that are introduced. I haven't played against Robin Hood or Bigfoot or Little Red or some of the other ones that have been introduced since early access. But right now, it hasn't been doing great. So this aggressive regroup play, it kind of lines up with my, general aggressive plan. My opponent doesn't know what this is, and they end up burning Momentous Shift, which is a fairly significant defensive or offensive tool. Now, granted, I don't get the benefit from regroup here, at least not the added benefit, but I'm still replacing it. And I do actually finally top deck one of the voyages. Now, each of the voyages will provide a different supplementary effect. They get their boost. They increase Sinbad's movement after they've been played, as well as boosting subsequent voyages. But they also provide a secondary effect. So one of them deals 2 damage. One of them heals 2 damage. One of them lets you move afterwards. One of them does this. One of them does that. And there can be, in certain matchups, times where, I really want to make sure that I play a certain voyage within a certain window, or at least it feels that way. It may ultimately be with Sinbad that you have a voyage, you play your voyage. But I haven't played enough games. And that's the beauty of it, is I'm still learning a lot of this, and I'm having fun figuring it out. And it's something that is unique as somebody who's played card games of the more traditional, aka TCG, CCG variety for decades, plural, and play them competitively and at high levels. While I can respect deck building, and I understand the advantages and disadvantages of having deck building in a game, there is something nice about being handed a deck like this, and it's a play style to just figure out. Identify how am I supposed to appropriately use this and adapt, given that I can't modify my resources before the game. So in this case, our opponent did appropriately play a feint, which is one of the big problems with playing Sinbad for me. It blanks all of this extra stuff because notably the buff to the power on the voyages themselves is an effect. So feint, as you saw on screen a moment ago, will cancel and blank the text box. So we miss out not only on the bonus effect, but we miss out on the buff. So given that they only do 2 damage, feint just completely blocks them, which really sucks. But those are the sort of things you have to play around, and this early in the game, I was able to drain 1 of 3 feints out of my opponent's deck. So draining that feint is a significant deal, or at least I thought it was. It may not ultimately matter, maybe I'm playing Sinbad completely wrong, but I've been valuing recently, as mentioned, trying to get those haymaker voyages in later on in the game. So if I can force them to drain one of those early on, and especially on an early on voyage where, yes, I want the effect. Yes, I want to try and push damage. But if you're blanking that and not the one that comes later in the game that's going to deal 5, 6, 7 damage, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So once again, we're trying a more probing attack here, trying to push stuff. As you can see also in the bottom right corner, that's where it delineates how many copies of a card are in the deck. So I have 3 regroups. I played 2 of them so far, but they're replacing themselves. So I am able to keep this chain going. I can either continue to pressure, or I can continue to defend if I need to, depending on what I draw. Now, the commanding impact here is pretty significant. It allows either the Porter or Sinbad to attack. If you'll notice, under the value for the card, it's going to say either a name or any. So in my case, Sinbad, Porter, or any. For my opponent, it could be Alice, Jabberwocky, or any. It's pretty self-explanatory, but to state the obvious, the any can go and be used by any character, whereas the ones assigned to a specific character can only be used by those characters. Now, in this case, we're able to get a huge hit here. 5 is a pretty significant amount. Most of the characters have sub 15 health from what I've seen. Admittedly, I haven't seen all of them, as I mentioned earlier, but since it's sub 15 health, whacking them for 5 and getting a replacement there felt great. At this point, I felt like I was in spectacular shape. I had flexible cards because the purple ones can be used on offense or defense. Blue is defense, red is offense. The yellow ones there are actually actions. They're your spells, air quotes, in this game. You can play them. You get 2 actions a turn. You can either do a movement action where you can move your whole team, and, well, you draw a card, then move your whole team. You can attack if something's in range, either melee or if your character happens to be ranged. Or you can play one of these action cards, and then you could do one of those actions again. There are some other limitations, such as there's a maximum hand size, that if you go over it at end of turn, you have to discard down to 7. There is a fatigue mechanic where, if you're familiar with, well, many digital card games, if you run out of cards in your deck and you can't play a card or choose not to, you have to draw a card, you're going to end up taking damage. Because you have to expend the 2 actions each turn. So we ended up taking some damage ourselves here, and I'm kind of in a weird spot because I was concerned at this stage that I was going to get pinned by the Jabberwock and Alice. We do have more movement available to us, so we can kind of sneak around. Of course, Toil and Dagger allows me to, squeak out of there real quick. But given that I haven't played against Alice all that much, I was now getting worried either Claws That Catch or Jaws That Snap. I forget the name of the card. I should know it. I should know the poem. But there's a few different things that are represented both by the Jabberwocky as well as Alice that could be very scary. So taking a turn off here while I am in range can be a little threatening. However, the draw did top deck for us Voyage to the Cannibals with the Root of Madness. I had to think for a second and then it popped back up. This is going to allow us to move after combat so we can get in, get out. Now, Looking Glass is actually seemingly a very powerful defensive card here, since it gives Alice the flexibility of choosing between these 3 options, and all of them are valuable. I was a little surprised that they didn't want to reorient Alice, move Alice to a different location, but I could certainly understand given that they were sub 10, down into single digits, and getting more gas. This whole time, I've been mostly replenishing my own tools. They haven't been as fortunate. So instead, I'm getting out of range. They are going to have to commit a move action, meaning that, sure, they may get big from an effect. They may end up attacking me for a lot of damage, but they're only getting the 1 attack. There's realistically no way for them to kill me in one shot or in a single turn, let alone in one shot. From here, I'm just examining the board while our opponent is trying to figure out what they're doing. One other thing I'll call out about this game is there are a number of maps. In the competitive environment, it appears that there are ways and interest in banning out certain maps, and as you'd expect, certain characters will perform better on a smaller, more confined map, or a larger map, or one where you want to be melee, one where you want to be ranged, that sort of thing. This particular map does allow you to open and close the doors, for what that's worth. It came up, I think, once, trying to go from memory, but I don't quite recall. I don't know if it actually mattered. Now, in this case, I was getting a little worried. The Jabberwock can definitely, Jaws That Bite. That's what it was. So the after combat is going to guarantee some damage. I was debating Feint because it would cancel the after combat damage, but in this case, I would have taken 2 either way because it would have prevented 2 damage, turned off the 2. This basically guarantees 2 damage. As far as I know, there's not a card that blocks 4 and also blanks text boxes, but maybe there is and I'm just not aware of it. So at this stage, given that I'm starting to bleed out, I was getting a little worried. So I'm trying to reposition here to find a better angle, maybe block them off, that sort of thing. Given that Alice is still tiny, we're not too worried. But there's this competing priorities. While I mentioned that I want to get away, it's primarily get away from the Jabberwock because there were other copies of Jaws That Bite. I was less threatened of Alice herself at this stage. That may ultimately be incorrect. And like I said, I'm still learning, trying to figure this out. So I'm taking mental notes as I've been playing. And I should probably start taking physical notes of, okay, well, these are my lines. This is how it's working out against certain characters, trying to figure it out. And at this time, we've now drained 2 momentous shifts out of Alice, which reduces the potential for damage output because that it is quote-unquote baseline 5, assuming you move. Then Alice herself could add extra from being big, etc. Now here, she is taking time off to draw cards, to grow, and obviously to take a big swing at me. So I don't have any other defensive options, so we're going with Feint. And it actually worked out very well here because this could have been an enormous amount of damage. It was baseline 5 thanks to Alice growing it, being big, and then the boost from the during combat effect could have represented an enormous amount of damage. So yes, we get hit for 3. Yes, we're down to 4 health, and now I was really starting to sweat it. But I think that I just kind of got lucky. I didn't do anything intentionally here. Now, I'm leading off with the Voyage to the Valley of the Giant Snakes here, because I do want to see what those 4 cards are remaining in their hand, so I can try and map out the rest of the turns. If they don't have something that's immediately threatening me, I was considering staying. But in this case, they feint, so guess what? It all gets blanked. Now, that's 2 feints if you've been tracking. So that means that all of those other voyages are now that much more threatening because they only have 1 more. There's only 1 remaining in order to try and stop me from tagging them for a ton. So in this case, given I had the feints, I elected to kind of tough it out here. The Jabberwock would not be able to run me down unless they boosted. And because of the feint, I was confident that I was not going to die. Plus, I can strip a card out of their hand, which is another reason why I wanted the other voyage to go through, so I knew whether I was willing to do it. However, Alice ends up defending with I'm late, so they're going to get out of here and, of course, change size. So they're going from big to small. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief. I feel as though I took some chances on this turn that at this point in time, I'm not 100% clear if it was actually valuable or appropriate to take these chances. And that was the discard there, if you were curious as to where that was, what that other card was doing there. But ultimately, I'm checking the discard here to see what we saw. And also just to double check what has our opponent played so far. And like I mentioned, you can check the deck list, which we're going to take a peek at now. The highlighted cards are ones that are still available. They could be in hand or deck. Of course, the grayed out ones, we'll call them, they are ones that have already been played. They're sitting in the discard. So there are a few that are still threatening, could represent some serious problems for me. And like I said, I'm kind of sweating at this point, even though they are across the other end of the map, essentially. Because I just don't have the gas right now in order to get in and immediately take them down. Almost, but not quite yet. So we get a draw here to try and refill. We're up 6 cards to 3. So I want to keep pressure on my opponent if I can. But really, the only one that matters is Alice. Attacking the Jabberwock is just attacking for the sake of it. And other than Exploit, none of the cards in my hand replace themselves. So I'm taking a risk here, which again, I'm not confident that these risks are appropriate or paying off. I have the defenses, so looking at Jaws That Bite or any of the other attack cards, I was confident that I was not going to die, but the risk here is that they get in attack, and then I basically have to leave again, thereby wasting half of another turn. I can get out of range, but I'm limiting my own options. The reason I went in was to try and trap them. They cannot leave because you can't pass through your opponent's units unless an effect allows you to. So the porter's blocking the top, and I'm blocking the bottom. However, I really wanted Sinbad to be able to attack Alice next turn, and the obvious play from our opponent was the Jabberwock, both to attack and to body block here. So I end up going with Leap Away, hoping that I'll win this combat, but realistically, it doesn't even matter. Well, it matters a little bit. I could move the Jabberwock, let Sinbad have an opening to get in, or I could retreat Sinbad all the way out of combat. Just send him back across the other end of the map. And the debate here, of course, is exactly that. Which option is going to be the quote-unquote safest? So I was incorrect a moment ago. That Voyage there does actually draw a card. But I end up moving Sinbad because I was really worried, which kind of says, well, why did I even go in initially? I could have put Sinbad towards the bottom, but out of range, so that way, if they wanted to come out, they would run into Sinbad, as well as pseudo-trapping them, like soft-trapping them in the corner, because they only have so many options. And of course, I could move in on the follow-up turn with Sinbad if they left it open. So in the meantime, we pick up another Voyage after we move in. We're going to go and advance the porter. And I keep doing that. I don't think I've done it yet, but this is my struggle with the UI, is I constantly, after I move, I'm ready to attack and then forget to cancel the movement. And I almost boost things. It's going to catch me one of these times. Thankfully, it hasn't yet. But for now, we're going to try and pressure Alice once again. They have 4 cards in hand, so they have to be careful, although they're going to be moving around. So I don't expect them to, either general move or from things like I'm late, they're going to be able to escape this particular spot. And this is actually pretty scary because I'm late will move you 5 spaces. That's a huge, huge move. Now, in this case, they didn't really need all 5, but now they're right on top of Sinbad, and they're big. They could end the game right now. This is why I'm immediately going to the deck list to try and figure out what's available. So Jaws That Bite is not an attack that Alice can make, so we can rule that one out. Unless they could rearrange things. So based on who they're going to attack with, I could kind of predict which attack is going to be made. Is it Jaws That Bite? Is it going to be Claws That Catch? Is it going to be the Skirmish? So I'm looking for what's the highest value damage that they can pressure with this turn. And then based on who is attacking me, Alice or the Jabberwock, we can then make a determination as to what the appropriate response is. And here we are. They're clearly coming after me. Moment of truth. It's first action, so I have to be careful because, of course, they can follow up with another attack. But thankfully, we do have Leap Away. Given the attacks that they have, this is probably our best option, the attacks they have available. So this will allow me to get out of combat. Now, the way that the resolution works here is the attacker resolves their effect first, which actually is crucial here. Because if I moved away, I would have been able to move a certain amount anyway, but this forces them to do their stuff first. Now, in this case, I'm saying it's crucial because it's important in other scenarios. In this case, I have to win the combat in order to get my move. So it didn't really matter. But this does tell me a little bit about their hand. Because they could have just stayed on top of me. And if they had it, I'd be dead, most likely. We do have the feints, but as long as they can do at least 4, either as a value of 4 or they have some other way of pushing the damage, I'd be dead. They could definitely strain my remaining defensive resources. But since they backed off, that tells me that, hey, they don't have it. Otherwise, why wouldn't you end the game on the spot right there? They could be toying with me and trolling a bit, but... So here's where I was debating about the doors. So I went ahead and shut the doors. They never tried it. So I'm assuming, because this has not come up on the other maps, that if you try to go through a closed door, you have to stop and open it and your movement ends. Because otherwise, what's the purpose? Maybe it's just a cosmetic thing, but that hasn't come up for me up to this point. But I closed it because I said, hey, you know, might as well take a chance. So I am aggressively pushing damage with Feint, which I didn't want to do, but I can't use the clearly marked Sinbad attack. And I figured this way, they are pretty low, and now my voyages have the potential to just be lethal. Hypothetically, anyway. Obviously, they still have another Feint, I believe, at this stage. There's still the chance for other mean things to happen. But this way, I'm stressing their cards and reducing their options. At worst, it's going to put my opponent in the position that they have to make a decision, and there's a chance that they make the wrong decision. You don't generally, in any kind of competitive game... Oh, they actually did use all the Feints by this stage, actually. We just saw that there. In any competitive game, you'd rather be making the decisions than your opponent, but if you are out of options, at least give your opponent the opportunity to make a mistake. If you don't present that, then of course they only have one path forward, and that path forward is giving them the win and not you. At least there's this chance that somebody could just slip up. So this was a boosted move in order to get the Jabberwock all the way up next to me. So at this time, we're just debating, and yeah, you can see the indecision on my part. So we're just double-checking the deck list real quick to see what's available, even though I just looked at this not even 30 seconds ago. So Claws that Catch, Jaws that Bite. That's what we're really concerned with. If they had Jaws that Bite, the game is just over because I can't stop it. But in this case, it was Claws that Catch, so we lucked out. Because we're able to cancel it, and we're able to prevent enough damage, leaving us clinging to life at 1 health. A meager 1 health. And at this point, yeah, basically any attack is going to end the game because I think anything they have available will actually kill us. Now, they have to actually chase me down, and Sinbad, as mentioned, can move all over the map. But I guess hypothetically, I'm late, or the regroup that's remaining, if those were the options that wouldn't get it. So I'm just weighing my options here, because if I go in, that's it. I need to end the game. They have 1 card in hand. I'm assuming that it's defensive related, or a potential defensive option, simply because, well, they backed off a few turns earlier. They specifically attacked with the Jabberwock. And you can see my indecision as I'm constantly rechecking to make sure, like, hey, is this actually what I'm looking at? Is this actually what I should be worried about? Although part of this is not just the offensive capabilities, it's what are the odds of their defensive options being able to keep them alive, because they only have 6 health. We do have a bunch of boosts on the voyages, so it's just a matter of, do we actually want to do this? So here's where you see the door decision again. It doesn't seem to actually change anything. I'm not really clear on what the doors do or do not do, to be perfectly honest. So I decided ultimately to go for it. Now this is going to, similar to Jaws that Bite, deal damage after combat. And it does not matter the range. So as you can see here, Alice is going to move away, but there are cards that say deal damage to an adjacent fighter. That's not the case on Voyage to the City of the Man-Eating Apes. In this case, it's a 6 damage card. We're getting 4 damage through, and then, oh, by the way, after combat, 2 damage to the opposing fighter. So, just like that, Sinbad does take the day, and I was able to score a win against Alice. It was definitely a lot of fun seeing that victory screen. So ultimately, that's Unmatched. There's a variety of different characters. There's a lot of things that I really enjoy about this game. As mentioned earlier, I've been playing it offline. I've also been playing it online. You'll have to let me know down in the comments if you want to see more of this game, either with different matchups, more Sinbad, or otherwise. And of course, you can check out the live stream and my Discord down in the description. While you're down there, likes and subscribes do help, trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And Black Lives Matter.